going to begin a little montage of everybody. So let's zoom in on these guys. We've got Seigel up top.
is dirty, but I don't know. Anyway, I enjoy very much that I have the choice of playing if I want, when I want, with whom I want. You tell him what you did in Firenze. You met my friends and you had lunch with them.
I had lunch with his.
Glen, we really miss you. You're conspicuous by your absence. We know that you're a heavy drinker, and this is in honor of you. I know you're not a heavy eater. Glen has been talking it down with you, see here. There's a tendency to eat junk food. It's not junk food today. Very nice. Anyway, we wish you well in your retirement and hope that you finish that roof before it starts leaking. Anyway, say hi to Annette and happy retirement.
All the members of the orchestra, all the members of the Philadelphia Orchestra, both past and present, who are here with us this evening, as well as members of our board of directors, our volunteer governing board, and our staff, who are all here this evening as we honor those 10 musicians who have retired between 1993 and 1995. I'd also like to add a special welcome to both Maestro and Mrs. Santarlasci, who are here with us this evening. As well as to Kyoko Takazawa, our violin soloist this week, who she worked very hard this week and is enjoying the lemon chiffon pie. What we are doing here this evening is a unique occasion. It's unique in the life of the Philadelphia Orchestra in that we do it no more than once a year. And it is unique, to the best of my knowledge, in the United States, as we pause to not only welcome back those musicians from the past who contributed to making the orchestra as great as it is, but as we also pause all together, all of us here this evening who work very hard all year long on behalf of the orchestra to honor those who are joining the ranks of retirees. This is the largest turnout, correct me, Lanza, this is the largest turnout we've ever had. And for those of you who have taken time from your schedules, we appreciate you doing that. You may be aware that this is something that has occurred after a two-year hiatus, and I want to pledge to you that, given this kind of response from all of you, I want you to know I recognize how important an event this is, and pledge to do everything possible to make sure that we can do it every year. At this time, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the new chairman of the board of the Philadelphia Orchestra Association, new in that he was elected just about 1 week ago. Most of you know him very well. Peter has made a lifelong passion of music and playing the violin and of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
not be with you during the balance of this program. And to hear about some people who, frankly, I just love. As Joe intimated, the Philadelphia Orchestra has been a passion. And many of you who are retired are people that I saw on stage when I was 10, 11, right on up through the years through respective retirements. You don't know how important you people were in my life. You were my heroes, baseball players, tennis stars, and I was a tennis player and played intercollegiate tennis, so it was an important part of my life. But none of them. They were just people. You people in the orchestra are gods to me. That's how it was. I'm a little older, a little wiser. I found out you were human beings too. But in some ways, it makes me love you a little more. If I started mentioning names, I'd probably leave someone out. But I just have to say that you mean more to me than any words I can express. And that's why it's such a privilege for me to be in this position. And if I have one objective, is that somehow we all pull together as an orchestra, as your musicians, the board, and the staff, and that we're one, and not three separate entities. You heard me say it the other day, you'll hear me say it many times in the future, and I have told everyone I work with that anything we do in the future has to be looked at in that context. How does it advance us together towards not only remaining and in the future being the greatest orchestra in the world? I thank you all for being here. I want to thank some of the board members who have come. There should be more. I have no hesitation in saying it. They don't know what they're missing out on. They're going to get to know you, and I hope you will get to know them. Enjoy the evening. Enjoy one another's company. And thank you very much.
And now it is my great privilege to pass the microphone or baton, as it were, over to the spiritual leader of this particular evening, a man who works literally day and night on behalf of making this event as successful as it is, Lou Lanza.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, I want to welcome you to the 10th annual party, honoring the people who have already retired, and 5 colleagues who retired in 1993 and 94, and 5 colleagues who retired a few weeks ago after a very successful tour of Europe. They represent approximately 327 years of service. At this time, I would like to welcome and recall some names of the past of some people who are already retired. But before I do that, I just want to spend just a short moment in remembering some of our colleagues who have passed in the last couple of years since we last met in March. Dulce Angelucci, Sudas, Teddy Hopto, part of the stage crew, Sam Betzer, bassist, and Bill Smith, former assistant conductor. Thank you. I would like to mention the reason for this annual party is not only to honor today's honored guest, but to recognize that it was all of you people who
laid this foundation that started this tradition of excellence that is unmatched by any American orchestra. Your colleagues want, my colleagues want you to know that your high musical standards has been and still is a true source of inspiration as we try to emulate your great achievements in the future. If you would be kind enough, I'd like to call your names out, and if you would kindly stand, and those of you who are here. Ed Arian, who was a bassist, Ann Bloom, who was Director of Education, Gabe and Shirley Browerman, Frank and Wanda Costanza, my former violin teacher, Harry and Jeanette Cordenser, Rosalind and Lisa Schreiber, Sam's widow, Wolfgang and Raquel Granat, Steve and Lynn Hewitt, oboist, Mason Jones from Forest Horn, John Carell, former piccolo player of the orchestra, Eric Ludwig and Martha, former violinist, whose son is now the associate concertmaster, Leonard and Beatrice Mogill, violist, Charlie Morris and Barbara, and the widow of former first flutist, Mary Tanitz, Myrna Tanitz. Bob and Betty Pfeiffer, soonest. Former principal second, Arben Rosen. Seymour Rosenblatt, unfortunately, became ill recently, he couldn't be here. And Joe Santarlasci and Rosemary, former manager of the orchestra, who incidentally was responsible in getting these parties started to begin with in 1982. Bill Sapatelli, cello, Sal and Bertha Schoenbach, former first bassoonist, Izzy and Sylvia Schwartz, former violinist, Jim and Marty Sweeney, stage technician in this way, Abe and Bert Torchinsky, the former mayor of the Philadelphia Orchestra, and Carl and Peggy Guerrero, who was a bassist, and he was also the former osteopath of the Philadelphia. Thank you very, very much for being here. We enjoyed having you here. We look forward to having you here as many times as we have this function. Please enjoy the rest of the day. I'm going to go right on to announce that since Herb Seigel retired, and he was part of my orchestra committee, as was Herb Rosen in the beginning. Herb has been with me since 1976, and now he's president of Philadelphia Orchestra, retired Friends group. And I have two people that volunteered and shared with all of us here the idea that this is a wonderful and necessary and important occasion to honor people who retired and people who have already retired. And I'm going to call on Don Pucci now, as one man, part of my committee, to give a little introduction, and then we'll continue on with the speeches. So the people who are going to be honored, be ready to be on your toes.
This year's celebration of retirees will have a slightly different twist than the years past. We've asked specific orchestra members to give remarks in appreciation of each retiree. And as we have not met for a couple of years, we will start with the retiree from 1993, proceed through 1994, and finish with this year's retirees. We promise brevity, some hilarity, and lots of sincerity. In other words, this could be anything from a toasting to a roasting. So, as we we announce the retiree and honoring speaker, could both please come up to the podium. So first, from 1993, David Arben, Associate Concertmaster, with appreciative remarks by Larry Reba.
What is a miracle? I think that it's a miracle that some of our ancestors left Russia, left Italy, left England, Hungary, left Germany, left Greece, even Switzerland, so we could have a better life. In most cases, just life. Our parents or grandparents didn't leave Europe, or wherever, in the early part of the century. There's no doubt that most of us would not be making music together, and familial, we would not be enjoying each other's company. How lucky I was, how lucky you were to have one. And it's a miracle. And it's a miracle that David Arben exists. As most of you know, his family, mother, father, brother, aunts, uncles, cousins, were exterminated by a madman, a rabid anti-Semite. And David himself was incarcerated in a concentration camp and was on the verge of also being exterminated. But because somebody recognized his 13-year-old with the golden fingers, he was saved. Saved to make a musical contribution for so many years to our orchestra and to our audiences. David grew up in Poland, or tried to. He studied at the Chopin Academy of Music. After being liberated when World War II ended, David studied at the Mozarteum in Salzburg and then at the Geneva Conservatory of Music in Switzerland. Then he discovered what Columbus discovered, and he came here to America. He studied at the Curtis Institute of Violinist, where he graduated. I think David really came to America because he heard that the USA was close to Cuba, where at that time the best cigars were made. David loves cigars. Without his daily cigar, the sun does not shine. You want to thrill? Sit with David in the restaurant while he inspires the chef and the waiters and the patrons as he blows their minds with puffs from his expensive tobacco. But there is no smoke to talk about his career. Before joining the Philadelphia Orchestra in 1959, David was a member of the Detroit Symphony Orchestra and the Cleveland Orchestra. He soloed with the Cleveland Orchestra, and he was a soloist with our orchestra a number of times. One of the most poignant remarks I ever heard occurred immediately after his first solo appearance with the Philadelphia Orchestra. After rendering the most joyful Mendelssohn concerto, he thanked a few friends, and with tears streaming down his eyes, softly said, "I only wish that my mother and father could have lived to see this day. I wanted so much to give them a little bit of knowledge." David joined the orchestra in '59 as associate concertmaster for many of those years, and was free at last, retiring in 1993. In addition, David brought his violin and his music to various parts of this world. He was soloist with the Hong Kong Philharmonic. He was soloist with the Swiss Romand. He soloed in Mexico. He soloed in South America with Senor Biafra, Colombia. He performed about double with his landsman from Poland, Henrik Schering. And in 1986, he appeared as soloist for the Philadelphia Orchestra's first performance of Andrzej Benufnik's violin concerto. Mrs. Benufnik has sent a note to David, and since it's Polish, I like our Polish linguist and the orchestra's ambassador to Poland, Paul Kreswicki, to read it to you.
Szanowny Panie, byłam wręcz zachwycona grał pan koncertu mego męża. Pan byłby niezmiernie szczęśliwy. Ja też posikałabym się z radości, by móc to słyszeć. Czy to możliwe, że ja mogę Pan dziękować prywatnie? Serdecznie, Panie.
Lately, Dave has been doing master class. From Puerto Rico to Bucknell University, and recently, well, at Bucknell, he stopped at the local state penitentiary. Not only did Dave do his music thing, but he taught the inmates Polish. Mr. Kreswicki will read you a gracious note from inmate Mohammed. Thanking Dave for his dedication and efforts to illuminate the language and the music.
Drogi Dawid, wysyłamy Panu ten list z podziękowaniem za pomoc. I żeby pokazać Pan, jak dobrze mówimy już po polsku. Teraz codziennie na dzień dobry mówimy naszym strażnikom, żeby ci już nigdy nie stanął w reketinie jeden. Yours truly.
David has been invited to repeat his successes next year at Kaderabek. One more piece of information. I found out just recently that David, when asked to perform the Minister of Ormandy, had to first get permission and clear from Rosen. David, always. Sorry, there is an announcement from President Glen, the White House stationery. Marcel, I think this is the language you can read. Marcel.
Önce şurayı göstermek mektupta kadar falan. It says the White House, Washington, October 1st, 1995. Dear David Arben, in the felt Messiah, the Watson Zigalis Pimpipik. Sei mir freudig, sei mir gesund, so sagt der Blick. I'm going to try and speak English.
musician making music in this great orchestra. The Philadelphia Orchestra, I've always considered my family. And I promise you, my feelings will continue. Always. Now, I'd like to wish you a very great season, and I understand you started out on a high note, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Now from 1994, Marcel Farago, cellist, with appreciative words by Kaderabek from the cello section. Well, it's very difficult to cover Marcel in 2 minutes. You really have to speak very fast. And unfortunately, I was chosen my English and my slow pace. Maybe later. Marcel was born in Romania, attended schools in Bucharest, Siena, and Paris, studying with Fournier, Baudelaire, and Tortelier. Before coming, Casado as well. Before coming to the USA, he was a member of orchestras in Budapest, Cape Town, and principal of the Symphony Orchestra in Porto Alegre, Brazil. Marcel joined the Philadelphia Orchestra in 1955 and retired at the conclusion of the 93-94 season. Marcel is known for his sense of humor, especially on the cello section. When the cello section is acknowledged by the conductor at the end of the concert, Marcel will turn to me and say, "No question, it is the best cello section in the entire orchestra." For a person who speaks so many languages, and I mean many languages, Marcel is a man of few words. When asked by Maestro Ormandy to announce the encore, Bach aired in Portuguese on a Brazilian tour, and if I may just say, it's a tradition that various orchestra members would introduce encores in countries where they speak the language. So usually you would say a couple of words to please the audience, to impress them with your language. So upon the request by Maestro Ormandy, Marcel stood up, he turned to the audience, and there he goes. Bach, arigoso. And yes, Richard Harlow, who is not here today, asked me to tell you this. Those of us from the Ormandy days will never forget your smile when Ormandy would give you the piano cue in the Pines of Rome, and you were sitting at the celeste. Marcel is a composer whose works have been played throughout the world. In 1982, his composition for orchestra, Acousticon, was performed in France under the baton of Maestro Ormandy. And tonight Marcel told me that the Acousticon has just been performed in Romania. His string trio was performed in 1985 as part of the Philadelphia Orchestra inaugural chamber music concert series. He has also composed a double concerto for 2 violins and orchestra. In November of 1989, the Philadelphia Orchestra performed his work entitled In Memoriam under the baton of Maestro Muti. The work was written in memory of his first late wife. Marcel has graciously shared with me some memories from a painful chapter in his life during the war years. His commitment to the Jewish heritage is admirable in a time when traditions tend to disappear much too readily. It's nice we write everything, but I would like to make a comment, just an inspirational comment. As I was driving home last night, I was listening, I turned on the radio, and I got tired of listening to the weather on KYW, so I switched to WFLN. And there is the Philadelphia Orchestra with Eugene Ormandy, David Oistrakh playing Tchaikovsky violin concerto. And of course, how can you not enjoy David Oistrakh? But I happen to be thinking about today, and I was thinking about all our colleagues who are here, Marcel included, who were there playing in that wonderful recording and producing that wonderful song. So, thank you all. And we can't end with a few of Marcel's famous lines. When I came to the orchestra, that's one of the first few things I heard on Thursday morning. Happy payday. And that is Marcel's line. As well as his famous musical announcements from the Toccata and Fugue and Wozzeck Waltz. To those of us in the cello section, it's very familiar. We love you, Marcel, and thank you very much for being a big part in the life of Philadelphia Orchestra.
The best speeches are the short speeches. No one can surpass me or even equal me. I proved it in Portuguese. I joined the Philadelphia Orchestra in 1955, and when I joined, I was told that this is the job of substitution for a cellist who left the orchestra for a 1-year sabbatical. So it's only a job for 1 season. However, I was told that if he doesn't come back, I have the first guy to stay in the orchestra. Comes December, the first season, I get a wonderful present from the orchestra management. Christmas present. A letter. The letter stated that my services are not required after the end of this season. That's how I started my 39 years in the orchestra. Of course, you can imagine, during 39 years I have ups and downs in the orchestra. There are too numerous to tell them. I want to say that from the first year to the end, Ormandy and I were the best of enemies.
Marcel, on behalf of the orchestra members, in this token of remembrance, hope you have a healthy, long life full of happiness.
Also from 1994, we honor James Fawcett, Associate Principal Viola. I had a very pleasant conversation with Jim last week. He and wife Christine are not able to be here this particular weekend. Their life in Sarasota is filling up quickly with new musicians. but he does send his deepest regards and regrets for not being here tonight. Speaking in appreciation of Jim's career, his colleague Sid Curtis.
I've probably known Jim longer than anyone in this room. We met as teenagers in a music camp in the Adirondacks in the 40s. After going our separate ways for 15 or 20 years, we renewed our friendship in the early 60s when Jim came to our orchestra. I have great difficulty doing this kind of thing, so I'd like to read something that Al Tolosa, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, has written that I think expresses our feelings about Jim very well. It's in the form of a letter from Al to Jim. Dear Jim, this will not just be a tribute to a retired colleague, but also a yarn about an anchor, but more about that later. When I first came to Philadelphia to audition for the orchestra, this is Al speaking, I arrived at the academy early, hoping to play a few notes in the hall before the auditions began. You probably won't remember this, but you were also there early, greeting candidates and organizing warm-up rooms. We had a brief chat. There was no time to trade the old jokes, were they invented yet? But from this brief encounter, it was clear that you loved the orchestra and were proud to be a member of it. Over the next 20 plus years, I can't recall a single occasion when your pride was not apparent. It showed each time we stood for applause. When the unique traditions of our orchestra are spoken of, I believe the extraordinary level of pride should be among them. And in my mind, no one exemplified this pride more than you. The other great quality that you brought to your work was an extraordinary commitment, not only to the orchestra as an entity, but more specifically to our viola section as an entity. Please be assured that the example you set in this regard was not in vain and has not been forgotten. We're sorry that you and Christine cannot be with us today, but we are pleased to hear the reason, namely that you're still performing actively and have an important performance this weekend in Florida. It would be a shame if your mellow sound were not continuing to be heard. Even if you were not enjoying the balmy Floridian breezes, we would not begrudge you that. You more than earned it. Which brings me back to the anchor. A few years ago, when I became an armchair salesman, this is Al speaking, I had an anchor going to waste in my basement and had the privilege of bequeathing it to you. I can only hope it is serving you now in the waters of Florida, as well as you served us through your pride, musicianship, and commitment as an anchor to our orchestra and the viola section. Bon voyage.
Many of you don't know what we give as a gift, but very quickly I'll just say, a cross pencil set, lifetime white onyx with an inscription to, in this case, Jim Fawcett, with the year and says from your colleagues, with affection from your colleagues. And I want to present this to Sid in hopes that we'll get it to Jim Fawcett. It's only temporary.
Thank you, Sid. And now, regarding 1994 retiree violist Seigel, we will hear from Lanza.
Mr. Seigel, would you kindly come forward? He said he's never done this before. Of course, we know differently. Herb, as I said earlier, served with me from the very beginning with Herb Rosen when we started making speeches on the last days of rehearsals of the final season of the respective people who were retiring. And then in 1982, we started having these wonderful parties to honor people in a more formal way. It's a pleasure to announce that the person on my left is being honored today after spending 32 dedicated and devoted years as a member of our incomparable viola section. Irv is a native-born Philadelphian who began his musical journey by studying the violin until his senior year in high school, when he decided to make a switch and began to study the viola. And after graduating from the old Northeast High School, 8th and Lehigh, he joined the Army Air Force in 1941. Irv had an unusual career in the Air Force, as he spent part of his service career playing the viola in a touring U.S. orchestra directed by Andre Castellanos, and that orchestra featured world-famous soprano Louis Pons. And after that, he was a radar operator in a B-29 and flew at least 16 missions in the Pacific Theater. Well, after this, certainly different kinds of experiences that he had in service, he was discharged in November 1945. And he immediately began taking lessons with former assistant principal violist Leonard McGill, and began freelancing in and around Philadelphia. In 1947, Irv was married to his lovely wife, Marcia, who unfortunately could not be here because of illness. And they have two children, a son, Ira, who is a hi-fi specialist, and their older daughter, Sherry, who lives and works in Paris. By the way, this also gives Irv and Marcia a good excuse to take a trip to Europe to spend some time with Sherry in Paris, and I'm sure he enjoys that. In that momentous year of 1947, when he was married, Irv landed a good job in the radio as a WCAU staff musician. And he stayed there for about 3 years. Later, Irv joined the Baltimore Symphony for about 3 years. And those seasons were not very long in those days, and he was forced to commute back and forth to Philadelphia to freelance and play in the opera orchestras. And during the off-season was the first time I met him. I was a student at Juilliard, and I was working for the Board of Education, and Irv was teaching at the new Northeast High School in the Northeast. And we both were teaching in the same building, and that's the first time I met him. And I knew there was something wonderful about this man, and it proved to be true as I go on in my dissertation here. Anyway, during the off-season, he played also in the Robin Hood Orchestra, which was the old Philadelphia Orchestra that played the summertime, the old Robin Hood. And he did that for a couple of seasons, and finally in 1963, he finally became a member of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And during his years in the orchestra, I would be remiss if I didn't mention how this unselfish, caring musician spent countless hours working for the betterment of his fellow musicians, not only here in Philadelphia, but all over the U.S. Forgive me for being a little emotional. He's been a very dear friend, and this is emotional time for me. For many years, he was chairman of the Philadelphia Orchestra's committee, negotiating many wonderful contracts and taking care of business in a very businesslike and warm way. He was also chairman of the International Conference of Symphony and Opera Musicians, ICSOM, from 1974 to 1980. And it is a well-known fact that this legendary leader who's worked on behalf of musicians has become a role model for others around the country. For all that Irv accomplished over the years, he was honored by receiving the prestigious Philadelphia Orchestra C. Hartman Kuhn Award for the 1991 season. It's given to a musician who has shown both musical ability and enterprise of such character as to enhance the musical standards and reputation of the Philadelphia Orchestra. And as I said earlier, Irv has been a member of our committee to help and plan and do the various things that we do to try and make this party as successful as we can. And that was in '76. retired. He's going to the University of Pennsylvania as a student. I forget what subject, but he's also chairman. He can't stop being chairman. Chairman of the Philadelphia Orchestra Retired and Friends Organization. It's the Philadelphia Orchestra Retired Members Committee. If I could describe Herb's years in the Philadelphia Orchestra, it would be to say not only was he a fine musician, who certainly contributed toward making the Philadelphia Orchestra a great orchestra that it is today, but a person who tirelessly worked for the betterment of the musicians here and all over the United States. Herb, I know I speak for everyone here when I say thank you for your extraordinary record of helping your fellow musicians attain a higher standard of living, not only in Philadelphia, but all over the United States. And now it gives me great pleasure to present you this token of remembrance and appreciation, hoping that you will have continued success in everything that you undertake in the future, and that you and your family will enjoy a healthful, long life full of happiness.
Santarlasci, who was manager at that time, and I look back on the life that I spent here as being a life not only of playing music, but making good friends and learning a great deal about our profession, our business, and certainly last but not least, the people who I met here, and the people who I have worked with, and the people who I have grown to love have been a very, very meaningful part of my life. So I thank you all for those wonderful thoughts and those wonderful views.
For the final retiree from 1994, we will hear from violinist Fawcett regarding Concertmaster Norman Carroll. I have a lot of pages here. I'm not going to read them all, but it's just nice to have them. there's an awful lot to say. Norman has been in the spotlight for so long in the city. Probably everyone here knows he's native Philadelphian and was a student from Zimbalist. Was at a very young age a soloist with the orchestra, and when he was 17 he was invited by the late Sir Kubitsky to join the first violin section of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. And soon thereafter went to New Orleans. Minneapolis, yes. Minneapolis as a consequence. Time to paper, I'm not looking. It's not very intelligent. And in any case, the accomplishments in your career are so numerous that if I were just to list them all, well, society's not doing the justice. I think this is probably embarrassing. And maybe keep us here until next year's orchestra party. I have to mention a few, though, as I try to convey all that you meant to this orchestra. You served as the Philadelphia Orchestra's concertmaster for 28 years. In that time, you brought honor to the name Norman Carroll and to the city of Philadelphia, here, throughout this country and the world. In addition to many memorable performances of the great concertmaster solos, Norman also played more than 50 different concertos and solo works, introducing Philadelphia audiences to the concertos of Hindemith, Nielsen, Comus, Britten, Hamilton Hardy, as well as one written for him by Stanislaw Skorochevsky. These performances were on more than 200 different concerts. In only his 4th season with the Philadelphia Orchestra, Norman received our charge to see Hartman Kuhn Award. And on the opening night of last season, Norman received the first Philadelphia Orchestra Award, along with Mrs. Ormandy, in appreciation of his extraordinary service and contribution to the orchestra. In fact, Norman, you may know this already, in the histories of the major American symphonies, there have been nearly 50 concertmasters, and your 28-year tenure was the longest, and by a significant margin. Norman's dedication to the Philadelphia Orchestra has not ended, though, I understand, as he's accepted a position on the orchestra's board of directors. I was going over these remarks with my son this morning, and telling him that, I was asked if the remarks were great, there were a lot of people, and, explaining that, well, I don't know how to really do that. And I told him a couple of things that I wanted to say, and he, one in particular, he said I really shouldn't miss out on saying. So, do you know that you're personally responsible for the demise of about 150 Pacific tuna? Very large fish, I think. I don't know how many of you know. It's a favorite lunch, probably. The tuna fish sandwich. And in fact, I think you left the Minneapolis Orchestra. I think you received a case of tuna fish from Dodson and Delusions. Seriously, I'm very humbled to be here today. You were my teacher for the 4 years before I joined the orchestra, but in many ways before that, and all the years since. My ideas of what a concertmaster should be were shaped by your example. Watching you, whether from the audience or stage, there was always something to be learned, an essential insight to be gained. You possess so many obvious qualities, as well as the intangible. A mastery of the instrument, naturally, a high-level personal artistry, balanced with intuitive flexibility, so necessary for accommodating 100 or so conductors. What was it you said? You don't always have to like it. You just have to do it. To fellow musicians and the public alike, you showed charm, wit, a sense of humor, and often diplomacy. Extremely reliable during performances, you exuded security and confidence. You had the ability to make split-second decisions and sure commitment while portraying a calm front, no matter what was going on around you or inside you. Since I'm not really speaking in public here, I can say that now and then a conductor would falter or even get lost in the score, but you never seemed surprised. Your presence of mind and courage in the absence of leadership from the podium saved many concerts, and was, in my opinion, a rare and one of your most remarkable intangible gifts. At these times, you kept things from falling apart, but in the best times, and there were very many, you were a source of defining purpose and inspired
just said about me. My wife and I have attended a number of concerts this past year, and both of us have been really very thrilled and excited about how fine the orchestra sounds, even though I'm sitting on the other side of the lights. I think one thing that is so unusual about the Philadelphia Orchestra is the wonderful and really exciting tradition that this orchestra has, and I think this is proven by all the retirees that are here today. They were certainly a very big part of it. I would just like to welcome the new members of the orchestra and wish you success in your career in Philadelphia. And as Phil mentioned, I have been honored to be asked to be a member of the board of the orchestra, and I hope you won't hold it against me.
On to 1995. For our 1995 retirees, we will begin with Frank Kaderabek, principal trumpet, with a spoken tribute from Roger Blackburn in the trumpet section. Frank is unable to attend today. I spoke at length with him from their new home. He and Mary are swamped with architectural meetings and plans for their lovely farmhouse that they've just bought out in, I believe, Berks County. He sends his deepest regrets and hopes to be here next year. Roger.
Especially Frank, to know that I feel deeply honored to have been asked to represent his career and acknowledgement by Don. And I wish he were here to give a little rebuttal to some of the stuff, but I collected a few thoughts over that I have discussed with him over the years and collected notes from some of his students and put together what I think is an appreciation of his life and career. Frank Kaderabek was born in Chicago, Illinois, and grew up in the suburban town of Cicero, which had a large Czech community. He once told me that the community was mainly famous in that time period because Al Capone lived there. But he began playing the trumpet in the 4th grade, even though his parents opposed his choice of instrument. He had experienced a severe case of bronchitis in earlier years, and his parents thought brass playing would damage his lungs. The town of Cicero was very supportive of their music program and had many incentives, such as trips and awards, to stimulate the interest of young people in the art of music. With the tutelage of a family friend, Frank began his musical venture on the trumpet. Once he was in high school, his dedication and abilities began to soar. Due to the war and shortages of musicians, many opportunities were open for him to play in dance bands. During Frank's senior year, a man who had just finished his 25th year in the Chicago Symphony came to coach the trumpet section. He was second trumpeter Ed Masacek, who subsequently became Frank's teacher and added the spark that focused Frank in the right direction. Later, Frank was accepted as a solo cornetist in the West Point Band and continued his study on the trumpet with famed New York City orchestral players Harry Glantz and Nat Prager. The 3 years at West Point brought Frank to the competitive level of playing required to win an orchestra audition. His first position in 1953 was principal trumpet in the Dallas Symphony under Walter Hendel. The season consisted of 20 consecutive weeks with no holidays, no sick leave, no Social Security or unemployment benefits, and no tenure or probationary status. The Dallas job paid $125 a week, and Frank stayed for 5 seasons. During the off-seasons, he played first trumpet at the Grant Park Concert Series in Chicago and did 6 weeks of one-night stands with the Wayne King Dance Orchestra. In the fall of 1957, he won the assistant principal trumpet position of the Chicago Symphony under Fritz Reiner.
No orchestra members committee existed in the Chicago Symphony at the time of Frank's arrival. During his 8-year tenure with the orchestra, he became very active in helping to establish a members committee that ultimately led to the birth in 1962 of the organization known as Ixon. In his second year with Chicago, Frank met his wife Mary, and they were married a year later in August of 1960. Frank had always desired to be a principal player, and when the Detroit Symphony position opened, he won the audition in 1966. After 9 years in Detroit as principal trumpet, he was called by Mason Jones to audition for Philadelphia. He was then 45 years old and thought that his age and not having gone to Curtis made his chances of winning the position very slim. After having been selected by the audition committee, Frank made the move to Philadelphia, where he played the last 20 years of his professional career as principal trumpet. Ironically, the last composition he played with us in Berlin was also the first one he performed at the beginning of his career in the Dallas Symphony. I'm Helderley. Numerous friends of Frank sent accolades to be published in a forthcoming issue of the International Trumpet Guild Journal. And one which sums up the feelings of many is this one from David Zauer, second trumpet and personnel manager of the Cleveland Orchestra. I quote, "I met Frank while serving in the West Point Band. We had a special friendship from the beginning. Over the years, I have admired the character and dedication of Frank Kaderabek. He has been an integral part of the development and growth of the symphony orchestra profession in America. I consider him a beacon of honesty, commitment, and sacrifice for the reputation of his chosen art." I'm sure that we all wish him much happiness and good health in his years of retirement. Frank, again, I wish you were here to speak more, but I appreciate all the influence he had on my career, and so I've been here for about as long as he did. Anyway, thanks so much for this opportunity. As for everyone who's here and everyone who's not here, we have a gift for Frank Kaderabek, and hopes that he will enjoy his retirement and live a long life full of health and good happiness.
For recent retiree violinist Julia Grayson Stanley, we will hear from her colleague Barbara Kokos.
During one rehearsal, Mr. Ormandy stopped the violins and asked why everyone else wasn't playing up on the G string too. When Julia does something, the way she does it makes it seem right. Julia has been more than a colleague and role model for me. She's been a friend and an inspiration, as well as the greatest source of black concert wear hand-me-downs I could have ever hoped for. Her retirement from the orchestra put a large dent in my wardrobe budget, but in all seriousness, she leaves an empty seat that will be very hard to fill. Thank you, Julia, and congratulations for your 31 years of dedication to the orchestra and to its members. All of our love and best wishes go with you to Columbus for the great adventures that lie ahead for you.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Barbara for those very kind words, and I also want to thank her for not mentioning the dress that I made for her, which fell apart at the seams the first time she wore it. Looking back over 31 years, it's gone so quickly. It's amazing. When you come into the orchestra, you look ahead to the time when you might retire, and it just seems like eons away, a time that will never come. But I was reminiscing about the first tour that I took with the orchestra. We didn't play in the summertime then, so we were happy to have something to do, and we took a transcontinental tour. One of those concerts, the stage was arranged in such a way that Ormandy had to come in and out through the second violinist. And I was sitting in the back with them. And we played the first piece, and the audience started to applaud, and as he left the stage, Ormandy gave apparent that I belonged there. Well, this happened several times, and I was getting more and more upset. What have I done? Did I play the wrong bowing? What was wrong? Finally, Ormandy said to me as he walked by, "Please sit down before I go past you. You're too tall." I was really impressed to see a lot of the retirees here tonight who were in the orchestra already when I came in. I look up to them, and I still do. And I look to the new young players who are also an inspiration, as well as to all of those of you who have been my friends over the years. It's been wonderful knowing you all. I haven't been away long enough to feel like I've really retired yet, but I am enjoying it. So thank you very, very much.
On behalf of the Philadelphia Orchestra members, I want to offer you this token of remembrance and enjoy good health and happiness in retirement, which is not really retirement, but enjoy the good health and success to follow.
For principal trombonist Glen Dodson, we will hear from Blair Bollinger, bass trombone. Glen is also not able to attend, sending his sincere regrets and salutations to everyone. He did say that he and Annette are up to their necks in projects trying to ready their home for sale. If you've ever seen Glen's home, it's a fantastic space where he knocked out walls, a series of townhouses. It's just an unbelievable space. If anyone wants to buy a house, I know he's open to this. But anyway, Blair Bollinger.
Thank you. I have had and continue to have the honor of knowing Glen Dodson in three capacities. First as a teacher at Curtis for 5 years, then as a colleague in the orchestra for 9 years, and also as a friend and for life. He's an inspiration to me all the time that I've known him, and continues to be an inspiration, and I wish him the best. What I wanted to share with you today, in large part, was a magazine article. This is the Journal of the International Trombone Association. I hope you can see the pictures fairly well. Eric Carlson and I put together an article, an appreciation article about Glen. And Judy Geist conned Glen into posing for this photo. We got it done completely by surprise. And the look on Glen's face when we presented this article to him was really made the day for Eric and I. We got really by surprise. It's full of priceless pictures all throughout his career. Pictured in the Marine band uniform without a beard. If you ever seen Glen Dodson without a beard, you wouldn't hardly recognize him. It's nice to see. And another one of my favorite pictures is a picture from last year's Halloween concert, where he's posed in his monk's outfit, and he also is standing right beside John Hood, who's wearing a dress. So we got John Hood in a dress in the International Magazine. I thought that was pretty good. Anyway, that was the bulk of what I wanted to share with you. Glen had seen the article, and he was really touched by it and was really pleased. We got a letter from Ricardo Muti. Ricardo and Glen always had a close personal relationship, and I would like to read to you what Maestro Muti wrote about Glen. It gives me great personal pleasure to send a message full of affection and admiration on this day when Glen Dodson is being honored. During my years as musical director of the Philadelphia Orchestra, he was, for me, an extraordinary musician, not only for his first-class technical abilities, but also for his extremely refined musical taste. His contribution to the excellence of the Philadelphia Orchestra has been enormous, and I'm happy to have kept with me wonderful memories of his vitality, both as an artist and as a human being, and to have concrete evidence of his artistry in numerous recordings. All best wishes to you, Glen, and to your future work. I'd like to add one more personal experience of mine, and on a more lighter note, we'll close with this. My favorite Glen story took place on tour one time in Milan. We were talking at the concert that night about what everyone had done that afternoon, and walk in the park, gelato, pasta, or whatever. And Glen's answer was typical Glen. He said, well, I went to take a shower, and the water flow was really poor out of the shower head. So I brought along my pocket tools and I disassembled the shower head. Got it cleaned out, now it works great. That's what Glen did that every month. Glen, I miss you, we miss you, and all the best.
Glen Dodson, this gift is given to Blair in hopes that he will have a long life, full of happiness, and lots of success in the future.
Speaking in honor of Lou Rosenblatt, English horn, is Richard Woodhams, principal of
Philadelphia native, Lou graduated in 1951 from the Dodson Institute, having studied the oboe with Marcel. After being in military service, where incidentally he roomed for a time with none other than our own Robert D. Pasquale, who I don't see here today, Lou played in the Houston Symphony and the New Orleans Philharmonic before joining the Philadelphia Orchestra in 1958. Lou has enjoyed a long and distinguished career here in Philadelphia, both as a performer and as a teacher, teaching both privately and at Temple University. Two of his former students are members of our current oboe section, and he has many other successful students throughout the world. Lou has appeared as soloist with the orchestra with distinction on many occasions, and his beautiful solo playing stands out on the innumerable recordings made during his tenure here. Personally speaking, I first met Lou in 1968 when I was an 18-year-old student at the Curtis Institute and played extra oboe in Le Sacre du Printemps, conducted by Marcel. Before that, I knew Lou only as one of my heroes, whose playing I enjoyed at the Saturday evening performances up
in the amphitheater. Lou's impeccable musicianship and professionalism did not prevent him from extending genuine friendliness and helpfulness to me at that time, when I felt a little like an underage interloper in the great temple of art. 9 years later, when I joined the Philadelphia Orchestra as principal oboe, I felt a tremendous responsibility to maintain the high standards of Tabato and my teacher, John Delancey, and again, I appreciatively recall Lou's support. Many times on our train rides, we would discuss in an objective, unsentimental way the musical and instrumental virtues of my predecessors, so that I felt elevated and inspired to inherit this legacy rather than being burdened by it. To me, Lou represents the very best traditions of the Philadelphia Orchestra. No matter what the circumstances we played in were, or who the conductor was, or wasn't for that matter, Lou's playing was always a paradigm of excellence. I have time only to name a few of its attributes. Immaculate intonation, beautiful tone quality, and a broad range of dynamic control that comes only from ceaseless and diligent preparation. Also, an interpretive seriousness and thoughtfulness that led Lou to find the appropriate musical expression from within the music itself. Something else I admire about Lou is his ability to use obscure words in the English language accurately. For example, he once criticized someone's performance, can't remember who it was, as being meretricious. This was a word I had neither seen nor heard since a high school vocabulary test. For those of us who don't use this word too often, it means attractive in a tawdry way. And its roots lie in a Latin word having something to do with the world's oldest profession. Lou, I can assure you that your playing never came close to descending to being meretricious. The path you chose to take shows tremendous self-discipline and dedication to our art. I hope that your many outside interests in language, literature, and art, and your natural curiosity with cultural stimuli of all varieties will add to your continuing musical activities to help you and your lovely wife, Renata, to enjoy a happy and productive retirement. And to that end, Lou, as a small token of our appreciation, the oboe section of the orchestra would like to present you with this book. This is a book of Italian painting, which we have inscribed to Lou Rosenblatt, a great artist in his own right, with affection and respect from his colleagues in the oboe section of the Philadelphia Orchestra. I know I speak for all of my colleagues, past and present, in wishing you and Renata all the best. We will miss you, but I can assure you that your presence will still be felt.
Thanks a lot, Dick, and thanks to everybody. And I'm going to have to read a few words here because I couldn't possibly remember all this stuff. Mr. and Mrs. Savalish, ladies and gentlemen, recently, while I was still in the orchestra, I started to wonder what I would remember most after retiring, about my 36 years in the orchestra. Well, now that I've been retired for about 3 weeks, I can give an early report. So far, the things that have stayed in my mind most are the great moments of music making on performances of his music. Oddly enough, we couldn't play fast enough to suit him. Kaderabek was here at that time also. These were, for me, mythical people that one heard about or read about, but never expected to meet face to face. Another time, Stravinsky came to conduct us in his own compositions. You might ask, was he a good conductor? Well, does it really matter? Another kind of thing that stayed in my memory. I'm referring to situations which seemed catastrophic at the time, but in retrospect, take on a humorous cast. For example, once on tour, I think it was in Italy, we arrived at the concert hall and were informed that our wardrobe trunks and instrument trunks had not been allowed to pass the customs inspection. It was suggested that we could play in our street clothes on instruments borrowed from the Milan Orchestra. It was a serious situation. Finally, the trunks were allowed to go through when they were labeled as containing perishable meat. It didn't seem funny at that time. On another occasion in South America, we waited at the concert hall when our trunks never arrived. We were later told that the customs officials did not see any point in taking the trouble to pass on that particular day. Well, anyhow, for me, far more important is the memory of wonderful artists sitting on stage or standing just a few feet away, and I was part of it all. And yet my part of it was practically only yesterday. I'd like to remind the younger members that Tchaikovsky once conducted the Philadelphia Orchestra. So did Richard Strauss. We have a long and distinguished history. That's the sort of thing that comes to my mind in thinking back about those 36 years. In closing, may I just say thanks to all my wonderful colleagues in the orchestra and staff for having been a part of my musical life. I'll be listening to you.
Lou Rosenblatt, when I first joined the orchestra, was one of 13 members of the Philadelphia Orchestra that we all went to the same high school. And one by one, they're all leaving. But this is given to you, Lou, and to hopes that you have great health and happiness and continued success in whatever you do. Bravo.
Principal bassist Roger Scott, we will hear Dignified from the bass section.
It is my privilege and great pleasure to introduce our final retiree of the day, Roger Scott. And although it will be difficult to say something about this gentleman that hasn't already been said, I will do my best. Roger was born in New York and spent his early years in Ann Arbor and the Philippine Islands, where his father was a university professor. His family eventually moved to Philadelphia, and Roger began studying the bass in high school. His enthusiasm for the instrument led him to enroll in the Curtis Institute of Music, where he studied with Anton Farago. After graduating in 1941, Roger toured the United States with the All-American Youth Orchestra led by Leopold Stokowski. followed by a tour in the Marine Band, where he played the baritone horn. After his hitch in the service, he spent a season in Pittsburgh with Fritz Reiner. And in 1947, Roger came home to the Philadelphia Orchestra under Eugene Ormandy, where he was named co-principal in 1948 after his first season, and principal bass in 1949. He also began teaching at the Curtis Institute in 1949, and the great tradition of American bass playing, started by Anton Torello, has flourished under Roger's care ever since. His dedication to the highest standards of performance has resulted in a remarkable number of former students becoming members and principals of bass sections in orchestras throughout the world. And the ripple effect shows no signs of slowing down. Roger, we thank you for your outstanding contribution to our art, and we wish you and Eleanor every happiness in the future.
Roger's 48 years in the orchestra is one of the longest tenures of any musician ever came to these parts in the orchestra, Cultural and manual. This is a gift to you from your colleagues in hopes that you will have continued good health and happiness and success in all that you do. This is almost the end, but it would be fitting if I didn't invite Maestro Ormandy to please come up and say just a few words, please.
Even in almost 50 years of my musical activity, I never had an experience like the experience of today. I learned a lot during the last 3 hours, and perhaps I could find a little bit of the mysteries I always have in respect to the Philadelphia Orchestra. So many journalists, so many people ask me, please, can you explain the special sound of this orchestra, the special musical activity of this orchestra? And it was always very difficult to explain what I felt about the sound of the orchestra. Indeed, it isn't a special sound, but everybody has different ideas what a sound is. And I tried to explain what I felt. Today, perhaps I found a little bit of the sound mystery. I'm very, very happy to feel the family of the orchestra. During the last hours, not only the respect to the musical activity of each of these people honored today. No, it is the personal connection between all the members of this orchestra. It is the incredible warm feeling that every musician has in confrontation to his colleague, to his group, his the great orchestra. And this warm feeling perhaps is one of the very important reasons for the great sound of this orchestra. During the last decades of tradition, this family grew up to an incredible, wonderful instrument in dedication to the most wonderful art we have, the music. And the music only can live if everybody is involved in this family, in this warm feeling between the musicians themselves. And this I learned today, that it could be one of the very important reasons for the great Philadelphia Orchestra sound. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I wish you personally, even in the name of my wife, for all retired people, I wish you the best, the very best for your future, for your personal life in and with your family. And I ask all new members to try and to do the best to understand as fast as possible what tradition and what colleagues are. And please, ladies and gentlemen, let me be involved for the years of my stay with you into our family. I would be very happy to be a partner of this wonderful, great Philadelphia family. I thank you very much, and I wish you the best for, not only for the rest of the day, for the rest of your life with music and with the Philadelphia Orchestra. Thank you.
the party will be over. But I will first thank Maestro Santarlasci and Mrs. Santarlasci for gracing us with their presence, and thank you both so much for your wonderful words. I think it will be remiss if I didn't say that this is the first time the management has assumed complete responsibility for all the financial arrangements of this party, and I am appreciative of this fact, and I want to especially say special thanks to the host of our party, Joe Kluger, who without his support over the years, since he's been head of the orchestra, we would not have this party, and I want to join, I hope you'll join me in giving Joe Kluger. Finally, and I mean finally, I want to wish you all good health, and I hope we will all be together again next year. Take care, Godspeed.
About Julia, my very best friend all the time I was in the orchestra. She came in the same year that I did, and we went through all the growing pains with Ormandy that she talked about. It's wonderful to be here. It's a great party. Thank you.
Special to Marcel.
Where is it? Is it right here?
Well, here's the camera.
Oh, you're doing it right now.
We're doing it right now.
Well,
For Marcel.
The only thing I could say is that Marcel always used to complain that he had to get up in the morning early to write a few notes before he'd come into rehearsals. Now he can get up late and write a symphony if he has to.
How about any words of encouragement about retirement?
Well, no, the only thing I could say is live to be 100 plus. He'll get so disgusted of living he'll want to die by then, so that's a good idea. I'll see. The trick though is to do it.
See you, Bill.
Well, I guess what I've admired most about Lou Rosenblatt is not that just, he's a great teacher and a great player, but what I've really looked up to his whole life is what a great person he is. And he's really stuck by me. I've known him for 20 years, and through thick and thin, he's always supported me, and I just know he would, as a person, he was someone that I could count on. So thanks, Lou, for everything you've done for me, and have a great retirement.
Dodson, you no good so-and-so. Why the hell aren't you here, you rotten, miserable? Hiya, then.